A deadly attack in a remote part of Borno has once again raised questions about how protected rural communities really are. In Tarfa village in Biu Local Government Area, armed attackers struck a farming community far from major military positions. What stands out is not just the loss of lives, but how quickly local defenders were overwhelmed, despite efforts to resist the attack. This incident did not happen in an active battlefield zone. It happened in a quiet, rural area where people were focused on farming and daily survival. That raises a serious concern. If communities outside the main conflict areas remain this exposed, then insecurity in Borno is not just a frontline problem, it is a systemic one. So the key question we need to examine is this: why do remote communities in Borno continue to face deadly security gaps, even years into the conflict? According to local security and community sources, armed attackers entered Tarfa village in Biu Local Government Area of Borno State on Wednesday afternoon. The incident happened around 4 p.m., at a time when many residents had returned from their farms after harvesting crops. During the attack, a pastor, 2 local hunters, and other civilians were killed. The hunters were part of a local vigilante group operating in the area. The Northeast chairman and commander of Hunters and Vigilantes confirmed that a small number of hunters attempted to resist the attackers, but were overpowered. Tarfa is described as a remote farming community, located close to the boundary between Biu and Howul local government areas. As of the time of reporting, there was no official statement from the State Police Command regarding the incident. These are the confirmed facts available so far. This attack did not happen at a random time. It occurred in the late afternoon when most residents had just returned from their farms. This is a predictable window when communities are more exposed and local defenders are limited. The location also matters. Tarfa village is far from major military formations and sits along local boundaries where response times are often slower. In recent months, attention has focused mainly on major conflict zones in Borno. Smaller farming communities like this one receive far less consistent security presence. Attacks in such areas often happen when armed groups believe they can strike quickly and withdraw before help arrives. The timing suggests that attackers are exploiting gaps in coverage, rather than engaging in direct confrontation with security forces. This helps explain why resistance, though attempted, was not enough to stop the attack. The real issue here is not just that an attack happened. The deeper issue is the continued exposure of remote communities in parts of Borno State. Years into the conflict, security coverage remains uneven. While major towns and known flashpoints receive attention, smaller farming villages often depend on local vigilante groups for protection. These groups play an important role, but they are not equipped to face heavily armed attackers. When they encounter superior firepower, they are quickly overwhelmed. This creates a dangerous gap. Communities feel protected enough to stay, but not protected enough to survive an attack. What this incident shows is that insecurity in Borno is no longer confined to frontline areas. It has become a system-wide problem, affecting places that are often overlooked in security planning. The most directly affected are rural farming communities like Tarfa. These communities depend on daily farm work for survival, and insecurity directly threatens both lives and livelihoods. Local vigilante and hunter groups are also affected. They are often the first line of defense, yet they operate with limited equipment, training, and support. Incidents like this expose the limits of relying on them alone for security. State and federal security agencies are part of this picture as well. Gaps in coverage and slow response times in remote areas raise questions about how security resources are distributed. There is also an impact on religious and community institutions. When places of worship and community leaders are targeted or affected, fear spreads quickly, and trust in safety declines. Finally, neighboring communities are affected indirectly. An attack in one village often leads to displacement, fear, and disruption across surrounding areas. While the attack has been reported, several important questions remain unanswered. There is little public clarity on why this particular community was left exposed, and whether there were early warning signs before the attack. It is also unclear how quickly security forces responded, or if they were able to reach the area at all during or after the incident. Another issue that is rarely discussed is the long-term sustainability of vigilante-based security. These groups are often praised after attacks, but their limitations are not addressed until another incident occurs. There is also limited information about preventive measures for nearby communities, even though such attacks often spread fear beyond the immediate location. These gaps matter because they shape whether similar incidents will happen again. Without addressing them, responses risk remaining reactive rather than preventive. For ordinary Nigerians, especially those living in rural areas, this incident highlights a troubling reality. Many communities depend on farming for survival, yet they are often the least protected. When attacks happen in places like this, people are forced to choose between earning a living and staying safe. The reliance on local vigilante groups can create a false sense of security. While these groups are brave and committed, they cannot replace properly equipped security forces. Incidents like this also affect trust. When communities feel abandoned or slow to receive help, confidence in the system weakens. Beyond Borno, similar rural communities across the country may see this as a warning. Without better protection, insecurity can spread quietly, far from major headlines. For many Nigerians, the key concern is simple: whether safety is something only towns and cities can expect, or something rural communities can rely on as well. There are a few important things Nigerians should watch for after this incident. First is whether security presence is reinforced in nearby communities. What happens in the days following an attack often shows how seriously the threat is being taken. Second is how authorities respond beyond statements. Clear actions, patrols, and engagement with local communities matter more than condemnations. Another thing to watch is support for local defenders. If vigilante groups continue to be relied upon, questions remain about training, coordination, and limits to their role. Finally, attention should be paid to patterns. If similar attacks occur in other remote farming areas, it would point to a wider security gap that needs urgent attention. These signs will indicate whether this incident leads to preventive action or becomes another warning that fades away. What happened in Tarfa village is not just a tragic incident. It is a reminder of a deeper problem that continues to affect many rural communities. Security gaps do not always appear where the fighting is loudest. They often exist quietly, in places far from major roads and military bases. If those gaps remain unaddressed, similar attacks will continue to happen, even as attention shifts elsewhere. So the key question Nigerians must keep asking is this: how long will rural communities remain exposed, and what concrete steps will be taken to protect them before the next attack occurs? That answer will determine whether incidents like this become rarer or remain a painful pattern.